Welcome back, everybody, to Grifter or Gifted. Today, we're going to be looking into someone that you guys have sent in a lot of material about Anna March.
Yeah, she seems to be everywhere right now.
She really does, and it's such a mixed bag. Like, what do we have here? We've got news articles, personal essays, podcast episodes, even some satirical takes on her story. So clearly, she's a polarizing figure.
Right, and that's what makes it so fascinating. Like, is she a visionary or is she a con artist?
Yeah, is she grifter or gifted?
Hmm.
I guess that is the question we're trying to answer today. So what do you think? Where do we even begin with someone like this?
Well, one thing that really strikes me is how Anna seemed to exist in these multiple worlds.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, on the surface, she's this magnetic figure, she's building community, throwing lavish parties, name-dropping all these literary giants.
Oh, yeah, very much the who's who of the literary world.
Exactly. But then when you start to dig a little deeper, you see a different picture emerging.
A darker side.
Yeah, there are accusations of financial misdeeds, a string of aliases, and she seems to leave a trail of heartbroken believers wherever she goes.
Okay, so it sounds like we got a real mystery on our hands.
We do.
We need to figure out, was she genuinely trying to elevate, like, the writing community, or was this all just a platform for her own personal gain?
Right.
So let's start with that magnetism that you mentioned.
Okay.
What made her so effective at drawing people in?
Well, I think you have to consider the psychology at play here.
Okay.
She was targeting a very specific demographic.
Yeah.
Writers, often those just starting out.
Yeah.
Hungry for connection, mentorship, and let's face it, validation.
Oh, absolutely.
And all of her tactics, the parties, the name dropping, they all played into this very human need for social proof.
Yeah, we all want to feel like we're part of the in crowd.
Exactly. We're more likely to trust someone if they seem to be endorsed by other people that we admire.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So she understood the insecurities and aspirations of her target audience. I mean, are we saying this was malicious from the start?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Could it have started with genuine intentions that maybe just went awry along the way?
It's possible, right? I mean, good intentions gone wrong.
It's tempting to want a simple answer.
Yeah.
But the truth is probably more complicated. Some sources speculate that she may have genuinely wanted to create a community.
Yeah, I can see that.
But then somewhere along the line, maybe things shifted, the lines blurred.
Maybe the need for validation took over.
Exactly, or the thrill of the con.
Like a con.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the sources that you sent in was this personal essay that details her infamous Hello LA party.
Oh, yeah.
It was apparently the place to be seen for anyone even remotely connected to the literary scene.
It was legendary.
It was legendary.
Yeah.
So how does this event fit into the bigger picture?
Well, I think the Hello LA party is a prime example of her modus operandi.
Modus operandi. Come on, break it down for us.
Okay, so she created this aura of exclusivity,
Okay.
this sense that you were part of something special, something important. And by surrounding herself with established writers and publishers, she basically borrowed their credibility.
Borrowed their credibility.
Right. She created this illusion of success and influence.
So it's almost like she was manufacturing social proof on a grand scale. But was it all just smoke and mirrors?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, one of the most controversial aspects of Anna's story is this modern love essay that she wrote for the New York Times.
Oh, yes?
She wrote about her relationship with her then-fiancé, Adam, a man who used a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where things get a little complicated, right?
Yeah, this essay became a real lightning rod for criticism.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of people accused her of basically using Adam's disability as a prop.
As a prop to boost her own image.
Exactly. On the one hand, she claimed to see Adam as not disabled, but then on the other hand, the entire narrative centered around his disability.
So it was less about Adam and more about how his disability reflected on her.
Exactly. And it raises all these questions about authenticity and exploitation. Was she genuinely in love with this man, or was she using their relationship to gain sympathy, attention, and ultimately literary success?
Wow, it's a good question.
Ew.
And you know what? This also speaks to a larger issue, the way that marginalized groups are often tokenized and exploited for someone else's gain.
Right.
But if we're trying to figure out if Anna was a grifter or genuinely gifted, we need to look at the hard evidence.
Okay.
And that leads us to the LA Times expose, which really blew the lid off this whole story.
Oh, yes, this was a game changer.
It was a game changer. So tell me about it.
Well, this investigative piece revealed Anna's real name,
Oh, wow.
and it uncovered a history of financial misdeeds.
So it wasn't just about lavish parties and questionable essays. There was a pattern of financial manipulation as well.
It seems that way.
What kind of schemes are we talking about?
Well, the expose revealed a pretty consistent pattern. Anna would create these nonprofits or community initiatives, often with these vague promises of supporting writers or promoting literacy.
Mm.
She'd attract funding, sometimes even sizable donations,
And then what?
and then she'd disappear,
Disappear.
vanish.
She would change her name and then start the whole cycle over again.
It seems that way.
Wow, so not just exploiting individuals, but entire organizations. That's something else.
Right. And this pattern really suggests a deliberate strategy, not just a series of unfortunate incidents.
Or like poor financial management.
Right. And this is where the gifted narrative starts to crumble.
Because even if she began with good intentions.
Yeah, the repeated pattern of deception and the financial harm, it points towards something more calculated.
Something more calculated. Okay, so we've got the magnetism, the manipulation of narratives, and now evidence of potential financial scams.
Right.
It's starting to look less like misguided good intentions and more like a deliberate competent.
Right.
But before we jump to conclusions, let's hear from the people who were drawn into her orbit.
Okay.
What were their experiences actually like?
Well, that's where the human cost of this story really hits home.
Yeah.
We have accounts from individuals who attended her workshops,
Right.
poured their hearts out, invested their time and money,
Yeah.
only to be left feeling betrayed and disillusioned when she vanished.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So not just financial losses, but emotional damage as well.
Right.
How did she manage to gain their trust so completely? Was it just down to her charisma?
Well, charisma definitely played a part,
Yeah.
but it was more than that. She was very good at creating a sense of intimacy and understanding. She made people feel seen and heard, which is incredibly powerful, especially for people who are seeking validation and connection.
And especially in creative fields where rejection and self-doubt are so common, that kind of validation can be intoxicating,
Absolutely.
right? It makes you more susceptible to manipulation. You want to believe in the person who believes in you, even when those red flags start popping up. Okay, so we're starting to see a clearer picture of her methods. But the question remains, was it all a calculated con from the start? Or is there a possibility, however slim, that somewhere along the way she genuinely believed in her own vision?
Right.
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
We'll dig deeper into that question, and we'll explore the lasting impacts of her actions right after this. We've been trying to untangle this whole Anna March situation, and I gotta say, it's a real head-scratcher.
It is.
I mean, we've seen the evidence of manipulation, even some potential financial harm. But is it possible that she started out with good intentions?
Well, it's a question that a lot of people are grappling with,
Yeah.
especially those who felt personally betrayed by her action.
Right, because they knew her.
Exactly. And this is where the psychology of belief gets really interesting.
Oh, okay, tell me more about that.
So the more we invest in something, whether it's an idea, a person, a community, the harder it becomes to admit that we were wrong.
So even when all the red flags are there waving in our face.
Yeah, sometimes we choose to ignore them.
Because admitting we were fooled is just too painful.
Exactly. It's called cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, our brains hate inconsistencies. So we'll often twist the facts to fit our existing beliefs rather than face the discomfort of being wrong.
We'd rather be right,
Right.
even if it means we're being manipulated.
And someone like Anna, who is very skilled at creating a compelling narrative, could easily exploit this tendency.
Yeah, it's almost like she was selling a dream, Find your voice, build a community, achieve literary stardom.
Right. Who wouldn't want to buy into that?
Especially in a field like writing, which can be so solitary and so full of rejection.
Exactly.
She offered this shortcut, a sense of belonging.
And that can be very alluring, even if it's all built on shaky foundations.
Yeah, it sounds very seductive. One of the sources you sent in was this podcast episode where they recounted this story about Anna giving away her expensive Joan Didion tote bag
Oh, yeah, I remember that story.
to someone, and then she insisted on paying them $100 for it.
It's such a strange detail.
What do you make of that?
Well, it speaks to this possible need for control and validation.
Even in her acts of generosity.
Even in her generosity, there's this element of manipulation.
She couldn't just give something away freely.
Right, she had to turn it into a transaction where she still held the power.
Interesting. So even if there was a genuine desire to be kind or supportive, it always came with strings attached.
That seems to be the pattern.
Yeah, it's almost like every interaction, every relationship was part of this larger game that she was playing.
It's a pattern that emerges again and again in the sources you've provided.
Okay, so let's talk about the impact of her actions on the people who actually believed in her.
Right?
I mean, we've talked about the financial losses, But you've also highlighted the emotional toll.
Yeah.
What did the people who felt betrayed by her have to say?
Well, there's a sense of profound disillusionment, like they were emotionally conned.
They really trusted her.
They did. One writer who participated in several of her workshops described it as a kind of grief.
Grief.
Yeah, like losing a friend who never actually existed.
Wow. And beyond the individual hurt, there's also the impact on creative communities as a whole.
Right, this kind of betrayal can really erode trust.
Yeah.
And it makes people wary of genuine connection and collaboration.
It reinforces the stereotype of the struggling artist.
Hmm.
Naive, easily exploited.
Exactly. And it creates this climate of suspicion, which makes it harder for genuine mentorship and support to flourish.
It's almost like she poisoned the well.
Yeah.
Even those who weren't directly affected by her actions might now be hesitant to trust others in the future.
And that's the real tragedy, because creative communities thrive on shared vulnerability, on this belief that we can support each other without fear of exploitation.
So where does this leave us? I mean, we've examined the evidence, we've explored the psychology, we've heard from the people who were impacted by her actions. Are we any closer to answering this question? Grifter or gifted?
It's a complex puzzle with no easy answers.
Yeah.
And I think the answer probably lies somewhere between those two extremes. It's possible that she did possess some genuine talent, some charisma. But somewhere along the way, those gifts became twisted.
Twisted how?
Well, they became tools to manipulate and deceive rather than to inspire and uplift.
So maybe she started out with a spark of genuine idealism,
It's possible.
but got seduced by the power, the attention that came with building her own myth.
It's certainly a possibility, and I think it's a cautionary tale for all of us.
In what way?
Well, in a world that's obsessed with personal branding
Totally.
and this relentless pursuit of success,
Uh-huh.
it's easy to lose sight of the line between authenticity and manipulation.
Yeah, the lines get blurred.
They do. And in the age of social media, where image is everything, it's more important than ever to be discerning.
To look beyond the carefully curated persona.
Exactly, and ask, what are the motives behind the mask?
What are the motives behind the mask? That's a good question.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another crucial question. What can we learn from Anna March's story?
Right.
How can we equip ourselves to spot the warning signs and avoid falling prey to those who might be trying to exploit our vulnerabilities?
That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we'll give you some practical tips to help you navigate this world of grifters and the gifted so you can make your own informed judgments about the people you encounter. Okay, so we've been talking about this whole Anna March situation, trying to figure out if she's a visionary or a con artist. How do we protect ourselves? Like, how do we avoid falling for someone else's carefully crafted act?
That is the question, isn't it? I mean, in a world where charisma can be weaponized, we really need to develop our own internal radar.
Okay, so give me some tips.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the warning signs? How can we tell if someone's genuine passion is actually just a performance?
Well, one thing to watch out for is excessive name dropping.
Yeah.
If someone's constantly boasting about all their connections, all the famous people they know.
Right, like they went to school with so-and-so.
Exactly. It could be a way of inflating their own importance to make themselves seem more important than they really are.
It's like that saying, those who can't do teach.
Right. Yeah. And remember, true influence speaks for itself. It doesn't need to be announced.
Doesn't need to be a billboard.
Right. And another thing to pay attention to is inconsistencies between someone's words and their actions. If someone is making these grand promises, but then they consistently fail to deliver, that's a major red flag.
It's like they overpromise and underdeliver.
Exactly. Actions always speak louder than words.
Okay, so if someone's all talk and no action, that's a problem.
Right. And be cautious of those who prey on vulnerability. If someone's really pushing you to make a decision quickly.
Like putting the pressure on.
Yeah, or pressuring you to invest without really giving you time to think it through, that's a sign to step back.
Take a breath.
Exactly.
Don't make any rash decisions.
Right.
It's almost like those high-pressure sales tactics.
Right, where they try to create a false sense of urgency.
To get you to do something you might regret later.
Exactly. And above all, trust your gut instinct. If something feels off, even if you can't quite put your finger on it, it's usually a good idea to pause and reevaluate.
Don't let charm or charisma cloud your judgment.
Exactly.
So it's not about being cynical or distrusting everyone, but it's about being informed and aware, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's being able to separate the genuine article from the fake,
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
manipulator.
And remember, asking questions is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of intelligence.
Well, that's good.
Don't be afraid to dig deeper, Do your own research, challenge the narrative that's being presented to you.
Challenge the narrative.
Right.
That's such an important point. It's so easy to get swept up, in someone's charisma or to buy into their grand vision.
It is.
But we need to be willing to step back and to think critically about the situation.
And if you do find yourself questioning someone's motives, don't be afraid to get a second opinion.
Talk to a friend.
Yeah, talk to trusted friends, mentors, colleagues, just get their perspectives.
Get a fresh set of eyes on it.
Often an outsider's view can really help you see things more clearly.
This has been a wild ride, I gotta say.
It has.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Slightly unsettling. But what are your final thoughts on this whole Anna March thing?
Well, I think her story serves as a powerful reminder that even the most charismatic figures can have a dark side.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a call for all of us to be discerning, to trust our instincts,
Uh-huh.
and to prioritize actions over words.
Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
And it really highlights the importance of community, sharing our experiences, both the good and the bad, can help protect others from falling into those same traps.
It really can.
So if something feels off, don't be afraid to speak up. You might just save someone a lot of heartache and a lot of financial ruin.
Absolutely. And I think by being aware of the tactics that grifters use, by fostering a culture of open communication and critical thinking,
Uh-huh.
we can create communities that are both supportive and safe.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this whole Anna March world, we leave you with this challenge. Hone your grifter radar.
Yes.
Be informed.
Be discerning.
Be discerning, and never underestimate the power of asking the right questions.
Right.
Because ultimately, the best way to protect yourself from a con is to become a savvy, informed consumer of information.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the gray areas of grifters and the gifted testaments. Until next time, stay curious and stay critical.